Welcome to our talk, SnailLoad. Anyone on the internet can learn what you're doing. Sounds pretty dramatic, but no worries, it's totally fine. I'm presenting today together with Stefan Gast. Here you go, a photo of him.
Yeah. So I'm a PhD student in Daniel's group, and it's actually my first Black Hat talk here, so thank you for having me, and thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's me, of course. That's also a photo, a bit older, but I still look the same. All right, so what do we do with this SnailLoad attack? So what you can see here is a matrix of some fingerprinting. What did we fingerprint here?
So these are basically the top 100 websites and an unknown class, so it's an open world website fingerprinting, and you see these this nice diagonal here, meaning that we can actually infer which website you are visiting with quite a high accuracy.
Or which video you are watching. So more about that later. So maybe we start at the very basics, because what do we need for this attack? This is not an attack that runs code on your system, but it's a side channel attack. So let's start with the basic definition. What are side channels? In a side channel, you don't observe the data directly.
So you only observe metadata, and then you try to infer some information from the metadata.
Right. So obtaining metadata, deriving data from it. We prepared a simple example here. For instance, you can sense whether someone recently has watered the flower or not by just feeling whether the soil is wet. That's a side.
That's very useful information, obviously, yes.
There are also other examples. For instance, one that has been discussed a lot in the literature is timing attacks, for instance, on pin entries. This is just one example. I wanted to speed up this video, but I didn't, so it takes a bit. So in principle, you enter a pin. The system checks how many digits are correct, for instance, with a simple string compare, and then you can see from the timing how many digits were correct. Yeah, the question here is, of course, where does the attacker sit? Is this a local attacker or a remote attacker? And what does remote attack even mean? So thinking about the local attack, what do you know about these local?
So yeah, for local attacks, for example, you have here this classical flush and reload attack, where you can infer where you can see whether some data is in the cache or not, and you see here this nice histogram showing a clear difference between these two cases.
But I think this is a bit of a restricted attack scenario, right? Because local means code execution.
Yes, and we want to have as an attacker, it's not always realistic to assume local code execution.
This code can involve the code to use the secrets, code to measure time, code to exfiltrate the data. So the question is, how do we get away from this local attack scenario to this holy grail of remote attack? What does remote even mean, right? In most attacks, remote typically refers to a remote adversary. That doesn't necessarily mean that the attack is like fully remote. There's still something happening on your system, right? So what examples do we have? For instance, there was a paper saying FPGA-based remote power side channel attacks.
So it's remote in the sense of, well, okay, it's not exactly the same chip in the computer, but it's still the same computer. So is it remote? Not
remote software-induced fault attacks in JavaScript.
We also execute the code locally there, so is that remote?
And JavaScript is quite fast also. What about remote timing attacks? Yeah. Still, if they are through some exposed API, network exposed API, where I can time what is happening on the system, I'm only shifting parts of the attack outside to the remote adversary. There's a different type of remote attacks also. What about Wi-Fi sniffing packet sizes, and then inferring which websites.
Yeah, but then you still have to be next to the attacked system, or yeah.
That's interesting. So it's kind of more remote in a sense, but then very, very local in a different way.
Yeah.
So the state of the art in this space is that with local code execution, we can fingerprint videos or websites. If we control a local gateway, we can also monitor the network traffic and can do similar things to our gateway. We can estimate the network traffic. Yeah, and we have seen different types of fingerprinting, application fingerprinting, website fingerprinting, video fingerprinting. But we want to take this to the next level. We want to do a fully remote attack. No code executed on the victim system. So how do we do that?
Yeah, for that, to understand, yeah, you have to know that there are different internet access technologies, for example, DSL, fiber, and others. They all have different throughput, but they are all a little bit slower, magnitudes even slower than backbone internet connections. So obviously there's a bottleneck next to the end device of the victim. What's typically done is, there's some buffering occurring before the last mile of the victim's internet connection.
This is really hard to imagine. Can you maybe visualize this?
Yeah, so if you consider this example here, so you have
just a round-trip measurement here. We're sending packets from the server to the user.
And this thing where the road gets narrow, that's the last mile bottleneck in the end.
Ah, okay. So we have this buffering right before this narrow part of the road. Okay.
So typically it looks like this. So one legitimate server sends out some packets, and then the victim computer or the client computer receives them and sends back some acknowledgement packets, so TCP acknowledgements.
But now you said buffering. What happens if there are really a lot of these packets coming?
Well, then it just takes a little bit longer.
And before we talk more about that, maybe we also want to go a bit more into the technical details of
it.
But now we can really well visualize what is going on. So what are the different cases?
So the simplest case is, well, okay, if the internet connection is idle and then at the router before your last mile, there's no buffering and the packet gets immediately forwarded. If the connection is busy, well, okay, then there is some buffering there, and it takes a little bit longer until the wet packet here in that case is actually forwarded. And there are some extreme cases, and this is known as the buffer bloat phenomenon, where latencies can even increase to something like half a second or so.
If we take a look at these traces, what do they look like? In this case, we just pinged a remote server, just a DNS server, and we measured the network latency on our own system while visiting different websites. And we did this multiple times. Here you once can see Google and Amazon.com, and then again.
Multiple things here are interesting. So you might already see that, well, okay, for Google the pattern actually looks a little bit different than it looks for Amazon. Maybe this enables something like a fingerprinting attack. Also, in the figure down below, even if we open the website from another computer in the same network, sharing the same internet connection, we still observe basically the same pattern.
All right. So maybe we should take a look at the corner cases. This is always what we do with side channel attacks. We look at the corner cases in timing. What is fast, what is slow?
So we examined that for different internet connections. And for example, we have an ADSL connection here. And you see, well, okay, if the connection is idle, the round-trip times are quite low. But as soon as you start the download from a fast internet server, well, okay, then you are in the range of 400 to 600 milliseconds.
But come on, this is ADSL.
Yeah, and actually that was one of the worst cases that we had here.
So how does it look for others? LTE?
So LTE, yeah, you still see a clear difference.
But what about fast internet connections, fiber to the
Fiber
home?
to the home, even there you see it. Also, for cable connections, you basically can easily distinguish the two different cases.
So maybe at this point, we understand how the side channel works. We need to talk about the thread model now, the attack setup.
So in that case, we have, this is just how any regular internet connection works. So you have your computer, which is connected to your home gateway, which you typically call router. Then you have an endpoint at the ISP level. Then you have some backbone internet connection in between. And then you have the YouTube server.
And the slow bottleneck is the problem here. But where does the attacker sit in this?
Well, just somewhere else.
Somewhere on the internet.
It might even be in a different country or, yeah.
And this is basically the attack scenario that we have. And you can mount this attack scenario from compromised websites, malicious ads, from emails, from any app, any network connection from your system to some server on the outside can do these measurements just by using TCP/X.
Yes.
That's basically it. Yeah, just to illustrate this again, so here we have the basic attack loop. This is our SnailLoad packet that just measures constantly the latency of the victim. In code, it looks like this. We won't go too far into the detail of this. We're basically just measuring the time, how long does it take until we get the attack.
Yes.
And then the attack works pretty much like this. We request a YouTube video or any other video from any other video platform. And we also get our SnailLoad packet here. And this one has to wait. Oh, no.
And you can see, yeah, that's probably the DSL case where it really takes quite a long time.
Yes,
so,
and then it loops. All right, what do we do after we got those traces? Of course, these traces, we don't want to look at them by hand. So
that's basically what we have machine learning for.
Yeah, we used some STFT, Keras, TensorFlow. We did some open and closed world measurements. And just to give you an impression of how well this works, we will show you some traces where you can already see some features. You saw this for websites already?
So we have here one video, but two different measurements. And you can, in the yellow highlights, you can already see, well, okay, there are some features that are quite distinct for this video. But if we change the video, then we will get other features showing that, well, okay, we can actually distinguish different videos from each other.
Now, one question might come up, and that is, how large do these resources have to be that we can monitor them, right? Because we will not always have a congestion on this last mile.
We checked that, and we observed that basically, well, okay, we need something around 0.5 megabyte.
Yeah, but 0.5 megabyte, no website is this large, right?
Have you had a look at modern websites?
I don't know. I started using
most
the internet in the 90s.
Most of them are larger than Doom was before, so yeah.
So here we have the video fingerprinting tested on 10 different connections, and we can see a clear diagonally that means diagonal there, and we can clearly see that we can recognize which video it is.
In the best case, we had an accuracy of something around 98%, which is quite a lot. And in the worst case, I think you can see it is the video it's the connection in the middle of the first row. And in the worst case, which was a fiber to the building connection, we still had something around 37%. You have to say that average guessing in that case would be 10%. So even in the worst case.
So what could be the reason for the different noise here? Of course, in one case, you might have a clearer signal because there's less going on this connection. For fiber to the building, if you have a lot of parties, then a lot of people might be watching YouTube right now. So a lot of videos overlap. So this would make the analysis much
And as always, if you have more training data, then the results might probably improve.
All right, which brings us back to the graphic that we showed you initially, where we can distinguish
So,
which websites you visit.
This was an ADSL connection, and we got an accuracy of about 63%, as you can see by the clear diagonal here. And this is open world fingerprinting, so we also included videos in a class which was multiple videos, so that we can show. Yeah, okay. It can also distinguish videos that it hasn't seen before.
But in most of these illustrations that we've shown so far, how do you know what the trace means unless you fingerprint, until you generate a lot of traces on this system first?
Yeah, we actually did one thing where we recorded the training data on one connection and used a different connection for the actual evaluation. And these connections were quite different. So we had a 50 megabit per second ADSL connection for training, and we applied the training data to a fiber to the home internet connection with 80 megabits per second, and we still got an accuracy of about 40%, which is actually not too bad in this setup. If you think about this, well, okay, a motivated attacker might just record traces of multiple internet connections and then choose the one that fits best.
Which brings us to the next point, the live demo.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have sent you an email.
Yes, okay. So we can switch to my computer, but you also have to start the demo on your side.
Yes, I do. Here we are.
Yeah, so this is now my computer. And I sent an email, a reminder to self. Yeah, that's good. And here, you sent me a nice email. Should I open it?
Of course.
Okay.
Do so.
Yeah, and then I'll continue okay, this is great. Just some image loading very, very slowly. That's a bit dubious. But let me start this nice video here. Great.
Oh yeah, I can see that. I can see that you already started the video. So
if we switch back now to the
my
other
computer, then I can see a live trace of Daniel's computer right now. And every time YouTube buffers, I will get these latency spikes. So on my computer, I can see that.
If I click to a different position in the video, you will also see these spikes. So if we can switch back to the other laptop again, we will see the attacker view, because of course this was the victim view maybe.
Oh, yeah,
and this image that you've seen in my email, this was for illustration purposes. Of course, this could be a tracking pixel. So just a very slow loading tracking pixel.
Yes.
And there we can see the attacker gets the same information. If I skip to a different position in the video, you can also see that, clearly a spike of some form. And then I will also close the video. Great.
Yes. So let me get back to the slides.
Perfect. Yeah, we tried more things. We also tried video call detection, also works well, so we can detect when a person starts to do a video call. And if you run this on multiple users and want to know whether they are particularly doing a video call right now, you can just run the attack on both users. You don't need their IP addresses. You just send them an email with a nice tracking pixel, and then you know. Yeah, clearly not concerning at all. So, yeah, then of course we had to evaluate also the noise.
So what we see here is, again, website fingerprinting. And the picture right at the left, this is what happens without any additional noise. And on that connection, it was, we got an accuracy of about 77%. Then in the middle we had noisy training data and we had noisy test data, and here we got about 15%.
How did we generate the noise there again? I completely forgot about that.
Oh, it was just some wget which was started and stopped in random intervals.
But is this a practical defense? I mean, I don't want to run downloads all the time on my internet connection, basically sacrifice part of my internet connection just to be secure from this attack. No. So what's the third graphic that I
That's actually, well, okay, here we did, we had no noise on the training data, but we had noise on the evaluation data. And here it's basically just random guessing. Okay. This also shows in a way that the machine learning algorithm has to actually see the noise in order to filter it out. So
yeah, but then again, it doesn't work very well if we have too much noise in there. All right, let's talk a bit about the context, the impact, the disclosure. Of course, we thought about, okay, whom do we disclose this to? Who is affected by this? Everyone? Difficult. So what we decided was it's a generic problem of networks with different speeds in the different links. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Also, yeah, literature also already knows, yeah, there are several attacks that you can do if you are a person in the middle. But yes, right now, we are no person in the middle anymore. But yeah, maybe we have to reevaluate them again in settings like this.
So we reported this then to Google and YouTube because we did our demo on YouTube. I don't know if we would have done this on a different video platform. Maybe we should have emailed them as well. Yeah, they investigated the issue for several weeks, also concluded that it is a generic problem, and it's not really clear at this point what we can do to mitigate this in a efficient and effective way. Yeah. Which brings us to the last slide, takeaways.
So any connection to a remote server can obtain latency traces, and by that infer what you are currently doing, which is kind of concerning if you think about that. Also, we showed that with website and video fingerprinting, but of course there might be even more attacks like that possible. So also, yeah, the root cause of all of this is the bottleneck that you have on your internet connection, and it's not easy to eliminate that. You could think about stuff like, well, okay, yeah, you just omit the buffering, but then you get packet loss. That's also detectable, by the way. So it's really a problem. So what we can actually do about this attack and how to mitigate it.
You can try this attack out on SnailLoad.com. You can just go there, try it out. If you have a very fast internet connection, you might not see as much as on your slower home internet connection. So at an event like this, it might be more difficult to see a signal. It can still be there. It's just more work to get the information out. We also did this work, of course, with a lot of people involved, and have to thank our sponsors there. But with that, we are at the end of our presentation. Thank you for attending. And if there are any questions, we would be very happy to discuss all the things with you.
Questions? Yeah, just go to the mic where it's behind you.
Hi there.
Yeah, hi.
I'd be curious, you mentioned there's a little bit of a problem if you have multiple transmissions at the same time.
Yes,
you have
yes.
multiple tabs open. I wonder how you think about potentially scaling this up. Do you think that with enough training data and looking at cases of people using multiple websites that you would be able to address that and still be able to predict?
I mean, it depends on the targeted accuracy that you want to achieve. Of course, more training data is always better, even in the noisier case. It might be possible to actually improve the accuracy. I don't know, of course, to which extent, which is something that's worth investigating, but it might be possible to go to a higher accuracy than we have shown here.
It's also a question of what the attacker is capable of doing. Like if the attacker, for some reason, knows what kind of noise is on there, they can filter that out more easily. If you imagine you have two images that you would lay over with 50% opacity, you can still clearly see both images. But for this attack as is, it would look like, oh, it's just noise, right? But as soon as you know which image one of them is, you can get out without any loss, basically, the other image. So if the attacker is able to filter out enough, they can still recover all the information.
Next question? Yeah.
Hi there. So would a possible way to fight against this kind of attack make it so that, like, I guess ISPs wouldn't be too happy about it, but the router can possibly buzz traffic to random places to add some noise at the gateway level? Possibly?
Yeah.
Possible, yeah. I mean, it would decrease the accuracy of our attack, but it probably won't fully mitigate it. Also, yeah, as you said, it comes with a lot of overhead in terms of basically useless traffic. So I don't know whether you actually want to do that. Yes?
Hi. I had I guess a similar question about this. Is this research specifically for, I guess, like a single stream of data? And so like if my end device, for example, had two different gateways going out to the internet and maybe the traffic coming through was load balanced in very different ways, is that another possible mitigation, or is that something that your tooling would still be able to kind of pull out?
Actually, we should test that, but I think, for example, for the video fingerprinting, it's like, well, okay, it might be possible that we need more. That we need longer recording times for each trace, but then at some point it will use the attacked connection. Not too sure about that. We have to check that, but it might be possible that it still works anyway.
in a sense, the load balancing would just drop 50% of the information from your stream, right? From your trace. Yeah, and you just collect more samples.
Hey there, thanks for the talk and the videos. I was wondering, so I guess most people concerned with this attack would be people trying to hide their browsing. So how does it look when they're using a VPN or Tor, for example?
So I think probably VPN, at least if it's a fast one, wouldn't change too much because it doesn't introduce a new bottleneck which changes latencies in a way that would probably affect our attack. For Tor, it's a little bit. I guess it's a little bit different because the transportation paths always change. So also the latencies change all the time, and this would make the attack a little bit, more difficult, maybe even impossible. I don't know.
I think for Tor, I think the main challenge is that very likely your internet connection is not your last mile is not the bottleneck anymore. And so you would have to target the bottleneck of that connection. And that could be more tricky. There have been several works on Tor traffic analysis already, and also some that basically try to ping or in other ways probe Tor nodes so that you can estimate the traffic on those. But I think the bottleneck would be there, and you wouldn't have any buffering basically for your local connection. Yeah, I mean, if you tried watching YouTube over Tor.
You might be blocked anyway from YouTube with that. Yeah. We actually tried that, and YouTube said, "Well, okay, it's I don't do
that." Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.